Hello, hello. Hi, everyone. I hope you're all doing well. It's been quite a week, and that's why I am hopping on here to chat with you about the recent changes that we received on March 19th from IRCC, especially regarding spousal open work permits. We're going to be talking about the changes, and also I will be telling you about some options that are available to you if you're impacted by these changes, and also those that are not impacted by these changes. So listen to the end, and there's lots of important information that you want to get out of this. Immigration is constantly changing and things are moving around, and we're here to guide you through all of the changes and keep you updated on what's happening and what's to come as well. So my name is Florence Apan. I'm the founder and lead consultant here at InfoPlace Canada, a Canadian immigration consulting firm that helps immigrants from around the world looking to come to Canada. So we're going to go right into what is going on with spousal open work permits. Okay? Talking about four major things. In today's video, I'll be talking about four major things. The four major changes that have happened to the study permit program in Canada: spousal open work permit changes, who's now eligible after March 19, 2024, and we'll be exploring alternatives as well. Now, this year has been such an eventful year because right on the 1st of January, proof of funds requirements doubled. It used to be just $10,000 in living expense, but it's now $20,000 per year for any applicant that is looking to come into Canada to study. And then on January 22nd, IRCC also came up with new announcements, which was the cap. There's a video right here on YouTube on that. 360,000 international students is what the cap is for 2024. And with the introduction of the cap was also the introduction of a new requirement for study permit application, which is the provincial attestation letters. The provincial attestation letters have started rolling out in some provinces. Not all provinces have completely implemented this yet. And in addition to those two things that I mentioned, there was also the potential change to the spousal open work permit program. So IRCC said potentially there's going to be a change to the spousal open work permit program. And everyone was like, sure, we'll see what that was, because it said in the coming weeks. But you know what happened? On March 19th, that finally changed. Now, aside from the spousal open work permits, IRCC also told us that they will be updating the Pgwp duration for graduates of master's program in Canada. So it doesn't matter the master's program that you're graduating from. If you're an international student, you'll be eligible for a 3-year work permit. And that was actually implemented on February 15th. So all of these things have been happening. There've been a lot of changes this year. It's been like, I think we had a post today, some other change that I might talk about later. And someone said every time there's breaking news. Yes, it's been breaking news back to back with IRCC for us. And it stems from a whole lot of things that is leading to the government doing so many things to combat the increase of immigration and ensure that Canada is better prepared to welcome the people that it does invite and give the opportunities to come into the country. So this is all that has happened. Four major key things that have happened this year so far, with the spousal open work permit eligibility being the latest that we're going to be diving into in detail. But now, before we go into talk about that in detail, what was there before, right? Before March 19th, any international students coming to Canada for any program, as long as the program was Pgwp eligible, the spouse was eligible for a spousal open work permit. However, now, from March 19th going forward, only spouses of international students that are coming from master's program or PhD programs, and a few exception of select program of studies, are now eligible for spousal open work permit. So that's a big change, right? Like, if you don't understand what this means, like, a lot of times not everybody qualifies for a master's program, and not everybody will qualify for the programs I'm about to show you that are actually now eligible for spousal open work permits. And people who are just coming for PGDs were not just young people, postgraduate certificate program or undergraduate program. Matured applicants who had spouses and families all came for this program as well. But because of this change, many of these people might have to rethink their plans of studying in Canada. So let's go into seeing the list of the people that are now eligible to study, to come to Canada with their spouses, what type of program. So I said the master's and PhD, and then some specific programs that IRCC identified. Now on my screen here, you can see the list of programs that IRCC has specified as being the programs that international students would be eligible to come to Canada with their spouse. And I want to show you something, that everything health, if you're coming to do anything health in Canada, they want you to come with your spouse. If you're coming for anything in education, engineering, nursing, and then of course they added law as well, in addition to all of the other medical degrees. They've added those that you would be allowed to come to Canada with your spouse. And this is, remember again, this specific list of programs they have here is in addition to the master's and the doctorate programs that are allowed to come to Canada with their spouse. So if you want to come with your family, you want to check your eligibility for a master's program. And we at InfoPlace Canada do assist with admission at no additional cost to clients. It's a free service. You only typically would pay your application fee. So if you're trying to find out, do I even qualify for a master's? Do I qualify for any of this program? Can I afford it to be able to come to study in Canada? Definitely reach out to our team, ask at InfoPlace Canada, and we'll be more than able to work with you through what your eligibility options could be, so that your plan to study in Canada is not impacting your family by you being split for a long period of time. So there's been a lot of questions since this happened. Does this impact existing applications? No, it does not. If you had submitted your application before March 19th, you will be treated under the old rules. And I can say that this does not impact you, because this week we actually received an approval, spousal sponsorship approval for our client. He's coming with his spouse. He's coming to join his spouse that we had brought to Canada on study permit. And they, four of them, the husband and the children, will be coming to Canada. So as long as you submitted your application before and you meet all the requirements to get a spousal open work permit, you are not impacted by this change. So it's very, very important to note that as well. Some of the things that applicants have been asking us is, does this impact students who have graduated and are applying for postgraduate work permits? Can their spouse apply for spousal open work permit? And right now, the answer to this question is yes. If you've graduated and you're applying for a Pgwp, yes, your spouse can apply for a spousal open work permit under certain conditions. Those conditions are that you have a full-time job in Canada, and you have a full-time job in Canada, and you have also met the eligibility requirements for Pgwp. So if you're all applying together, you have to ensure that you complied with your obligations as an international student. You meet all the requirements for a Pgwp, and you have a job in Canada. Preferably, what we always advise our clients to have is at least 3 pay slips in that application for Pgwp and spousal open work permit at the same time. But there are also situations where there are clients who would choose to wait to apply for their spouses after they have actually been approved their spousal open their Pgwp. You have the options to do either way, depending on your circumstances. You always want to assess and be sure that you're eligible and your spouse is also eligible to apply as well. The other questions we've been getting, because one thing at InfoPlace Canada is that we do bring a lot of families that come to Canada together to Canada. It's something that I really hold dear to my heart. Something that's very, very important to me, because Canada is not the place that if you have family, you leave them behind and come alone. Honestly, it's not. Typically, when we talk to our clients, if you can come together, if we can get a strong application and with everybody coming together, that's always the preference. Most times, depending on funds and requirements and spouses' employment and certain things, not all families are able to come together, and they might end up coming in split one at a time to achieve their goals of coming to Canada. Now, children have not been mentioned or impacted in any of these announcements that have happened this year. So if you're coming to study in Canada at any level of education and you have children, your children can still accompany you to come to Canada. One of the things that I'd mention about children accompanying you to come to Canada would be the proof of funds requirements. That's something to still remember, that if they're coming, it increases your cost of living requirements, and you need to factor that in and ensure that you have that before you make that decision to come to Canada with your children. So those are some key answers to some of the questions. But we had, when this was shared on our Instagram page, there were a lot of questions that people still had about the IRCC's plans. How is this going to impact me and things like that? And some of these questions I've already answered, but I'm just going to read some of the questions that came up, and I'll answer them again here. So does this mean that people for master's program in other fields aside from professional courses can't come to Canada with their spouse? The answer is no. The first group of people that can come with their spouse are people coming for master's and PhD, and then these other additional programs that IRCC listed. So any master's program you're coming for in Canada right now, you can come with your spouse. Does this affect spouses of students in other programs who are already in Canada? So if you're a student already in Canada and you are not in one of those programs that IRCC has stated that will be eligible for spousal open work permit, and you did not already apply for spousal open work permit for your spouse, unfortunately, you are impacted by this change. So that's one of it. And just hang on, because I'm going to be talking about other options that you have to bring your spouse in as well. Application was approved in October. Our passports have the Canadian visa for work and study. I will study at a college for a 2-year program. Does this mean that my husband will get an open work permit at the port of entry with no issues, even though we will travel after March 19th? The answer is yes. Your application has been approved. So you're not the people submitting after March 19th, on or after March 19th. You already got yours approved. You're already in. You already have your visa. You will be issued work permit at the border, all things being equal. And of course, you're still meeting the requirement, because the CBSA officers, I would like to stress here, do have the final say. So as you're coming into Canada, it is important to ensure that you still meet the requirements for the program that you had applied to. So as long as you do at the time of your application and you have meet all of the requirements, your spouse will be issued that spousal open work permit. Second to the last question here that I want to tackle is, does it affect spouse who's in Canada already but postgraduate diploma and the main dependent will extend his course after 1 year? Will it affect the dependents who want to extend? So if you're extending your work permit, if your spouse is already here with you and you're extending your program, extending your study permit, your spouse is not impacted as well. They're already here, they already held one, they can extend their spousal open work permit as well. Would it affect the person coming for an MBA program? Will my spouse get an open work permit? An MBA program is a master's program. So if you already have that admission, congratulations to you. Your spouse will be able to join you in Canada on a spousal open work permit. Okay, so we've talked about all the changes. I've answered some of the burning questions that we've had people ask us about this change. And now the next thing is, if you're impacted by this change, what are your options? What can you do? Does that mean your spouse can't come to Canada? The answer is no. It doesn't mean your spouse can't come. There are other options, and I have some of them on my screen, and I'm just going to talk about each of them. Your spouse can come to visit you. In fact, we do have a lot of spouses who choose not to go for the spousal open work permit option and are more on the side of, I want to have the ability to come in and visit in Canada. Spouses that typically work remotely, spouses that have very good jobs in their home country, spouses that are the breadwinners of the family and have great jobs. They don't just want to quit and come to Canada, especially since the other spouse is already just here on temporary basis. With a visitor's visa, you can come into Canada to stay for a maximum duration of 6 months, or to the time that the officer has stamped on your visa, when you're the CBSA officer has stamped on your passport when you're entering Canada. The only downside, of course, with a visiting visa is that you cannot work. But it allows you to be able to come into Canada and be here. And before I talk about the middle option there, which is independent study permit, what I would like to talk about here is closed work permit. So if you were able to come into Canada on a visitor's visa, you might be able, given your skills, work experience, and things like that, while in country, be able to land a job. There are people who have come here on visiting visas and been able to successfully, legitimately find good jobs that they are then able to be sponsored by an employer who would typically apply for an LMIA for them to support the application and then help them get something called a closed work permit. Now, why the spousal open work permit was very attractive, of course, was because it was an open work permit. So it meant that you could work for any employer across Canada and things like that. So that was one of the big benefits with it. But people still come in on closed work permit if you're able to secure a job with an employer that can assist you. We've also had students who have been happy, who have been open for both of them studying in Canada. It would be very expensive for some people, but some people don't mind. It's like, we have the money, we both want to do this education, let's go study all at once. So that's another way that people are able to come into Canada. There's one other option that's not listed on here: permanent residence. It doesn't have to be that you are here on study. If any of you were to eventually be able to transition from a temporary status to permanent residence, guess what? The whole family is going to eventually be able to come to Canada. In fact, I had a client of mine whose spouse was able to finally come to Canada. She was here going to school, eventually got PR, and then the spouse was able to actually join when they eventually got PR. That's more permanent, that's more certain. Then they can stay here and build a life and know that they don't have to deal with all the temporary changes and statuses that come with Canadian immigration status. So there you have it. A lot of there are options, but of course, for some people it might be good options, and for some it might not be. There are many reasons why people definitely prefer that spousal open work permit, because the spouse could be working, could be gaining Canadian work experience, supporting the family. They are together. If the spouse is leaving a job in their home country, they're able to comfortably stabilize here. If that is something that is very important to you, my advice to you would be to try to get into one of the programs that would allow your spouse to come with you. A master's program. Typically, the requirement for a master's program in Canada is second class upper and above, a B plus and above, and things like that. But sometimes we have seen times when even CGPAs with lower grades are able to still get into master's program. They're very tough to get into, but if you have excellent years of work experience and all of that, our team might be able to look at your profile and see if there's something that could work to help you come for a master's program and be able to come with your family, especially if that's what's important to you as well. Now, with everything I've said, I know that there will still be situations and scenarios that I have not covered, and that's where usually a one-on-one session really comes into play. If you're listening to this and you want to dive in more and get more analysis of options for your own unique situation, my advice for you, of course, would be to click on the link that I've just put up there and book a session with one of my consultants who would be able to help you walk through your immigration options and advise on what would be the best option for your family. So my team is always here. We're always here to help you. We're always here to help you navigate through your options. One of the things that we always say, and we see a lot of people do, is wait until things are really late in the game. Wait till there's no wiggle room to advise. Like even when you advise, they're not able to implement your advice because it's just too late. You really ran out of time. A lot of things are changing with Canadian immigration. And one of the things that I would say to any immigrant who is here on a temporary status, on temporary basis, would be to really, really look at your options ahead of time. If you love Canada, you want to be here, look at your options ahead of time. And if you want to come to Canada as well to study, you might look as if things are tough right now, things are very difficult, but there's still opportunities, and you want to look at your scenario and pivot into what would be the best option for you and your family. So I do have a team of consultants that work with me. They are highly experienced in most of the immigration pathways that we assist with. I definitely schedule a call with one of them to have more of a one-on-one session, talking to you about really what you can do given the situation that's in here, or any other immigration issues or concerns that you do have. Reach out to my team. You can leave us a comment. You can send us an email. I'm going to leave our email right here. You can send us an email. You can call the office. The number there is also on WhatsApp. We do have our customer service team who is always available to answer questions and redirect you to whatever service that you need from us. Once again, thank you for listening and watching this video. If you found this helpful, do not forget to subscribe and also share this video with anyone who has questions about all of these changes that are happening with immigration and need to know how to navigate their own plans in Canada. If you need help with any application, we're always here to help you. Thanks you once again, and I'll see you on my next video.